Why, hello there. My name is Mountain, and today I'd like to talk to you about this. Well, sort of. You see, normally I do 35-minute long reviews that go into exhaustive detail about everything you might ever want to know about a bag or piece of carry equipment. But today I wanted to try something a little bit different and talk about an intersection of several of my many hobbies. In this case, travel, bags, everyday carry, and photography, with maybe a little bit of ultralight kind of mixed in there. See, I wanted to kind of show a sample loadout from a trip that I just got back from. It was 4 days, an international trip. And what I wanted to do was explore if I could do that in a bag that's like under 10 liters in a sling form factor. This one is 9 liters. And I'll talk about the bag here in a second. Now, there's no particular reason why I needed to do this, but I kind of enjoy travel not only for like all the usual reasons of meeting interesting people and seeing new places and learning new things, but as a distinct activity and almost, I would say, a hobby in and of itself, because I enjoy how travel can introduce new objectives, novel considerations, and impose unique constraints, for example, around scheduling or routing or weight or cost or all those different things that makes us need to think outside the box or outside the bag, as it were, and problem solve across multiple dimensions. So and actually I spend a lot of time on the road, and most years I'm on the road about 200 or 230 days out of the year. So anyway, let me talk a little bit about how I approach this trip with this bag and the gear inside of it, and let's see where we go with this. So first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to limit myself to less than 10 liters. This is and a sling form factor. Obviously I could do this with a big backpack or 20-liter backpack or whatever. I could travel and have traveled the world extensively, with just a 20-liter, 24-liter backpack. But something like this, I think is much more compact than that. It is something that I wanted, something that could get my stuff from point A to point B, but still have enough organization on the inside that I could use it as like my EDC bag at the destination, where I get all in this here in a second. It had to be a fairly, like I said, I wanted a sling form factor because this kind of forces me to even be a little bit more constrained or whatever. And so what I settled on was the Aer Tech Sling 3 in X-Pac. This is 9 liters actually. And as you can see, it's a fairly like svelte bag. I mean, it's large by sling standards, but it's very small by like, this is what you're going to travel for almost a week with. And I chose it for all the reasons that I kind of mentioned. So it is a sling form factor. It has a load carry system that I quite like for, sort of a sling. It's not quite a messenger style, but it is sort of like a sling style that has a variety of positions you can wear it at. It's not particularly big. Obviously will fit under the seat in front of you or almost any situation, but still has a little bit of capacity, as you can see, that you can pack in probably the bulkiest things like the clothing or whatever that you might need to bring for an international trip here. I also considered the Aer 12-liter travel sling, but that one was a little bit bigger than I needed. And it has an older style, hasn't been updated to the version 3s yet. And I don't really like the sling carry system on that one. I also obviously considered other bags like, a Green Room 136, Metro Monger, and other kinds of things like that. But for me, this one was kind of like a nice little a touch there. It is X-Pac. There's a bunch of other different variants available. It has like these water-resistant YKK zips, an external quick access pocket, and then this big main compartment, which we're going to talk all about here in a second. Inside there's a laptop or tablet carry pocket, another pocket here for your papers, a business, leisure, or other, a bunch of like internal organizer pockets, and then like an internally front-mounted kind of like zipper pocket up at the top. Plus then this big open area here. So for me, that was a really great combination of like EDC usable type organization with a big area so you can carry your packing cube with your clothes or whatever, which for me was really in a nice compact package. So let's get into what I have inside of here. Let's open the bag up and we'll just start taking things out, and in no particular order. So let's start with actually one of the things that I think is kind of the most interesting, at least from my perspective, and that is this little Dopp Kit here. Now, I sewed this Dopp Kit out of DCF fabric. This is my own little production here. A little yellow, so I know that it's my Dopp Kit, which you'll see why that's important in a second here. And one of the frustrations I have with general Dopp Kits is that, they're these big, bulky, heavy things, quite inefficient. You'll bring like even travel size toiletries are quite large. Often you'll even only use like, 2 or 3, I don't know, like 1/3 at most. That's quite a lot, even depends on the length of your trip, of the quantity. You're left with like this big, smelly, wet or whatever, like bunch of tubes and goop and whatever. And so for me, like that just, the longer I travel, the more experienced I become, the more I realize like I don't need that big fancy Dopp Kit. I don't need all that big extra dead weight and capacity. And so I took a kind of like lesson from the ultralight world. I do a lot of ultralight hiking, even though I myself am not particularly ultralight. My gear is anyway. And I went to kind of look to like, what is the smallest amount of products or items I could bring that would still allow me to, care for myself in a reasonable manner, but, not load me down with a bunch of unnecessary weight and bulk. So let's start with what I have inside of here. I have here a Marvis 10 milliliter toothpaste. I stole this from the Peninsula Paris. They have these great little 10 milliliter size ones, but you can also get like the normal, like, whatever your toothpaste brand is in your country. Like these usually little travel size ones that also work really well. I bought this toothbrush. This is an Officine. Apologies to the French homies if I mispronounced that. Toothbrush. This is Officine is French brand that specializes in like fancy bougie combs and those sort of things. But they also have this really great tiny little travel toothbrush, which is perfectly sized for this thing. And I really liked it. I paid far too much money for this thing, but I really like it. It's a nice little quasi-Luke experience in my little Dopp kit here. I have here a Kent comb, a small one, which I think is also perfectly sized to kind of like fit along with these other Dopp kit accessories. A little small nail clipper from Mujirushi Ryohin in Japan. Talk about this in a second. Some chapstick, because you gotta have your lips moist. This is a Muji tube. You can put like your hair gel or your hand lotion or whatever you kind of lotiony thing you want in there. It's a really nice size. It also doesn't like leak under pressure. This is a little bit of a little razor that I got, generic razor, compatible with Mach 3 blades from Amazon. You can find these all over if you search, just like micro, Mach 3 razor or whatever. A couple of ear swabs. There were more when I started, but this is what I have left in the Dopp kit after I got back. You can get those in the store or whatever. And then this is kind of what I really want to talk about. One of my frustrations is like, especially with travel deodorants, is like you get these. Even the little micro travel ones usually aren't the brand that you like. They're usually kind of gross. They're very inefficient in terms of like size to like capacity. Like there's these big bulky plastic things, and most of it is like empty space and kind of useless or whatever. So I took, again, a hint from the ultralight world. I went and I bought this little like, deodorant tube from AliExpress, but you can get it on Amazon or whatever. I took my normal deodorant and I melted it down in the microwave. Just put it in like a little beaker or glass or something like that. Put it 20, 30 seconds. Watch it. Don't let it boil, but it'll melt very quickly. And then you can pour it inside of here. It solidifies and you have like the perfect amount of deodorant, whatever size you need or form factor for your trip. For even shorter trips, or like when I'm kind of like hiking or whatever for a couple of days, I'll put it in something smaller, like a little lipstick sized tube or something, or a chapstick sized tube, which you can also buy on AliExpress or whatever. So that's a really great hint, I think, if you're looking to, have like a small Dopp kit and you don't need like the whole big bulky thing, and then you just refill it at the end of every trip. I like, at this point in my travel kind of career or whatever you want to call it, I really prefer like simple flat pouches with, sometimes with a little bit of dimension in them. I don't need all the fancy organization. This is like a super high capacity to weight and size ratio. And you can see there's still a little bit of space in there if you need to put some extra stuff. Maybe you have a couple of additional things you got to bring or some medicine or whatever. That'll fit inside of here. And it's very simple and easy to learn how to make a pouch on your own, or you can obviously go buy a generic pouch of any size that you need online there. So next, let's talk about kind of my miscellaneous kit here, identified by the blue. This is also another pouch that I sewed out of DCF, but again, you can use whatever pouch you want. So I keep these things inside of little pouches sometimes, so it's easier to kind of just keep track of them and move them from bag to bag. But obviously, like when I'm at the destination, I take the stuff out and I put it in the individual pockets in the bag, which I'll show you later. So inside of here, I have another chapstick. I like to, have one on the outside pocket in case, I need to emergency moisturize my lips, but probably I could have cut this if I didn't need a second one in there. So inside of here, I have my AirPod Pros. These are the Gen 3s, USB-C, obviously, because it charges, with the USB-C charge that I have, and I'll show you in a second here. These are great. I have a lot of different headphones and earbuds and stuff like that. I do quite enjoy. I would not call myself an audiophile, but I enjoy listening to music and the gear that helps me listen to music. But these are really nice because they're like very practical. I switch between all my devices, my phone and my iPad and all that stuff. They charge to USB-C, great noise cancellation, battery lasts a good time, not a long time, etc. I have here a Maglite solitaire flashlight. It's plenty bright for what I have. Lots of fancy different flashlights, but this one I like because it just takes, standard cells, and it has, you can refill those anywhere. Obviously, USB-C rechargeable batteries are also kind of nice, but it gets plenty bright enough. It's very small, very robust. I like this one a lot. And then I have a another Muji container with some hand sanitizer in there. I usually pair that with my chapstick in the external pocket, so like I can, like I said, put some chapstick on or sanitize my hands whenever I might need to. And then in terms of writing, so I used to bring like these big, and you see them on some of my other review videos, like these big Bellroy note taker, leather, things with pockets, and they were lovely. And then I would just bring like a bare, but they were kind of big and bulky. And then I would bring like a bare field notes, and that was nice too. Although honestly, like paper quality field notes is really not that great. And over time, I realized I wasn't even filling out the whole field notes. I still needed to occasionally be able to write some stuff, but I didn't need the whole thing. So then in the end, I went to something like this, which is the Life Noble Note. This is plain, so no lines or whatever, which is what I prefer. That or a dot grid, but they make them in a variety of different patterns. 30 sheets, A7 size, which for me is perfect. Like this is, plenty for like jotting down ideas or whatever, but still being really, really small. And then I pair it with this Lamy Pico pen, which pops open to let you write with a full-size pen, but then collapses down really small. The refills that come with these, like the M22s, are pretty useless, in my opinion, for my preferences. I tend to have some preferences around kind of like the writing experience. So I 3D printed out a insert here. I'll show you. 3D printed this insert and then paired it with a D1 style refill, which is amazing because there's lots and lots of different kinds of D1 refills on the market there, and that gives you a much better writing experience and still preserves all the nice things about this particular pen form factor. And so then that all just kind of fits inside of here very simply and easily, as you can see. And then it's really easy to move it from one bag to another. Now, one thing while I'm talking about notes and notepads and all that, another thing that I've kind of been moving towards, which is even more minimal than the Life Note and the Lamy pen here, is actually moving to like these sort of like Jotter style. It's a kind of Japanese brand called Jotter. This is not a Jotter memo pad, but it is a Jotter style kind of notepad. We have these little cards inside of there. You write on them, again with another Lamy Pico, which is modded the same way. And then when you're done, you stick them in the back here. There's a variety of different sizes or whatever. For me, I like this even more sometimes because it's just a different kind of form factor, but I like the idea of having distinct cards that I could take out and write on both sides for and then store them, stick them in a wall or something like that. Something else to kind of consider. This is also very small and light. So next, let's talk about the camera. So those of you that follow me on Instagram or on my website or wherever, or even watch my reviews, know that photography is a hobby of mine. It's something that's really important for me. And so I always want to carry like a nice camera. That's just kind of part of the travel experience for me. There's a lot of different cameras that I have and I consider, like the Leica Deluxe 8 or the Sony RX100 series, etc. The Canon PowerShots and all those things. For me, I have those cameras. I've sold some of them on now because generally I found that the Ricoh GR series, particularly the GR4 series, while it does have just a fixed 28mm f2.8 equivalent lens, has a really nice APS-C size sensor. So really in terms of those other cameras that I mentioned, that's really just the Leica Deluxe 8 that offers an APS-C sensor, married in that case with a 2470 2.8 zoom. But I've never been really impressed by the image quality and the handling experience of that, though the UI and the physical design of the Deluxe 8 is amazing. It's also a much larger camera, comparatively speaking, than this one, and I really am satisfied with the image quality out of this. It's quite nice. They also sell, it's a very compact body, as you can see, but they also sell like different adapters. This is the wide angle adapter with the adapter that fits on this. That'll turn this into like a 21mm equivalent. That can definitely increase the usability and flexibility of this camera, although like it is quite big and bulky. There's also a Ricoh GR3X that I have that is 40mm, and they have a teleconverter that you can attach to that, so that can give you a pretty nice kind of like some 60-70mm equivalent with the teleconverter on there, and up to like a 21mm equivalent here with the wide angle adapter on here. Or you could just bring these little tiny pocketable cameras, USB-C charging, which is really great and very convenient. And I just really do dig this camera so much. And you can carry a GR3X and a GR4 right next to each other because they're so small. Some other things that I consider, like my all-time favorite camera, it's going to be tough to say, but it might be the Leica Q3. I really love them. I have this in the 28 millimeter with the 1.7 Summicron, and then also like the 43 millimeter f2 version. It's a really great camera, but it's just really, it's significantly larger and heavier than the GR4. But there are definitely trips where I'll take this one when I just want like that really shallow depth of field, and just the superior handling and larger megapixel resolution of this one, because it lets you get some pretty aggressive crops in there. An option that also is kind of full frame, the Q3 is full frame, is the Sony RX1R Mark III. This is probably the smallest of the fixed lens interchangeable or non-interchangeable, like fixed lens full frame kind of cameras. So significantly smaller than the Q3, especially if you remove this optional front lens hood. And you can see actually, like, if you compare the sizes of all of these, you can see that the GR4 is obviously smaller. It's an APS-C sensor and fixed lens 2.8, but you can see it's actually not that much. The RX1R is not that much bigger in two of the dimensions anyway, than the GR4. So this is something that I'll sometimes bring when I want better image quality or a 35 millimeter lens equivalent. But for this particular trip, I went with the GR4. So next, let's take a look at the Tech Kit, unsurprisingly in a homemade DCF pouch here. I used to carry like big, fancy tech organizers with all the cables and all the things. And there are still sometimes trips where I'll want all of those different options, because like I'm really doing everything that you could possibly imagine under the sun in there. So I need a bunch of different adapters and hard drives and all that stuff. But for most cases, especially since everything moved to USB-C, I find that this is plenty fine enough. Much like the Dopp Kit or like that Miscellaneous pouch that I showed you earlier, like my preference these days is switch to like a very simple pouch with no internal organization. I can just throw stuff in there, and reducing the number of items that I have in there so I don't need all that different organization. Let's start with the charger here. There's so many different Anker chargers, a variety of good chargers out of the market these days. This is the 70 watt with 2 USB-C and a USB-A plug ports, and then a folding plug here. It's plenty powerful enough, up to 70 watts out of either of these USB-C ports, so it'll power any kind of device like a MacBook or whatever. I have a USB-C SD card reader. Technically, the GR4 uses a micro SD, so you need to bring a SD card to micro SD adapter. Apple Watch cable, because I'm using an Apple Watch these days. And then I have these two Beats cables, which I really like, actually. So the Beats cables are braided, which is great because I find them to be much more resistant to like damage and wear over time, as are the new, Apple Watch cables. And they come in 1.5 meter lengths, which for me is great, because 1 meter sometimes just too short, especially when you have it plugged in. Like, some hotels will put the port just a little bit too far, from the bed. So it's hard to reach your phone with a 1 meter cable. And then 2 meters is too long, and it's often like much thicker because it's made to carry, charge, 240 watts or whatever, charge big computers or whatever. So I don't need that. It's a little bit too big and bulky. So these 1.5 meter length braided Beats cables for me are great. This is a USB-C to USB-C and the USB-A to USB-C. And then obviously this is USB-C, so that lets me use all 3 ports on this at the same time. And then I just have a little power adapter for the country that I was in. And again, this is not very many items, so it makes it really easy to kind of just get everything packed up in here. And you don't need to, because I do have like different color cables. I mean, I guess you could technically get a different color cable for this one if you wanted each one to be different. So it's very easy to visually distinguish between which cables they are at a glance. And it's easy to kind of get everything thrown inside of here and zipped up. And I find that this is plenty for just about anything that I could ever need. And it's, there's a little bit of extra space. You put one more cable or whatever in there. And just, kind of to show like, we end up with like these nice 4 little pouches, just identify with slightly different colors or whatever, which for me is perfect for like being able to like move my stuff between, one bag or another. Let's talk about clothes. I think clothes is one of the biggest, bulkiest things that you're going to be carrying. Here I have an Eagle Creek Isolate Packet Cube S. I did think about, I have sewn my own DCF pouches, as I've shown in some of my other review videos. But for this one, I quite like the Isolate pouches. Nothing too fancy, no compression or whatever, but this does have this nice little angled area so you can roll up or roll down very easily. It was just, the S size is just the right size for this bag that I'm going to show you here in a second, and still lets me carry enough clothing in. It is a very lightweight but very robust material. So let's look at what I have inside of here. Now, one of the things that you kind of have to, I think, just accept if you're going to be traveling minimally is you're going to have to do some washing. So for me, Oh, actually, sorry, I'm missing one shirt. Sorry, there should be two shirts in here. I think I just have one because the other one's in the wash. So obviously I wore a shirt, and then I had two extra kind of shirts inside of here, plus my clothing for inside of the hotel and workout or whatever here. But, you know, usually I go with either like a very light merino wool sweater. This was by Arc'teryx, or a synthetic, depending on the climate and the kind of performance characteristics I'm looking for here. Long sleeve, unsurprisingly black, as it makes it easier to match everything, and plus I like black quite a bit, as you can probably tell. Long sleeves, so you can push your sleeves up when you need them if it's a little bit warmer, or you can pull them down if if it's a little bit colder. Obviously, I was wearing like a sweater and then like a jacket, so that gave me extra kind of combination options here. So I had black on this one and then dark gray on the other one that's in the wash right now. Then in terms of the internal clothing, I have here an Arc'teryx Cormac t-shirt. It's very light, very stretchy, very fast drying synthetic blend. And then I have a Arc'teryx kind of almost windbreaker style pants. I use these for kind of like my room wear or whatever. They're both incredibly light, fold up very, very flat, and they dry very quickly. You can also use them as your kind of workout gear in a pinch if you need to, because they are actually originally designed for that. And then besides that, I just have like a change of underwear, an undershirt, and then like a pair of socks, an extra pair of socks inside of there. And so for me, that is plenty. Like I said, you have to kind of accept that you're going to need to do laundry, which is why for me, I prioritize these light, fast dry and synthetics that are not very bulky, and also, especially with merino wool, have, your kind of odor resistant kind of properties if you need to. And like I said, if you're wearing like a sweater or a jacket or an extra layer, that gives you a lot of different permutations. Plenty, two little shirts and a sweater gives you plenty of different combinations for a 4 or 5 day trip. And then, you have to, wear the same pants. So if you're wearing jeans, that usually is not a problem, or any kind of like fast drying travel pants or whatever, you can wash that and it'll dry very quickly. Otherwise, if you're gonna have to bring another pair of pants, it might get a little bit bulkier. So that's sort of like the one compromise I make. And then just accepting that I have to do laundry. Looking at the bag itself, let's zoom out just a little bit here. There's a few more things we need to talk about, but I want to show how they kind of tuck into here. So first of all, there's this big laptop compartment here. It'll hold up to a 13-inch MacBook Pro or Air, although I don't know if I want to carry a Pro in a bag of this size here. It's this is a Tech Sling after all, but it can carry it, but I wouldn't want to carry that as my main computer. So usually I use like a MacBook Air. I'll talk about this in a second here. There's another kind of slip pocket here for your papers of business or other in there. You have these 3 pockets in here. Here's where you would put your pen, but obviously I have a Lamy Pico in there, so it's in my little pouch right now. And then you have these 2 kind of stretchy elastic pockets. And then, as I mentioned, you have this big open area at the bottom, and then you have this internally mounted stretchy kind of like organizer pocket with Aer Tech pocket hidden inside there. So really nice blend of like organization and like drop-in areas. And then the load carry system on this one has like an adjustable shoulder strap, which is generally pretty good, and I like it because it lets you wear the bag up tighter or down lower as you want, and as you want, kind of your preferences there. So kind of good bag for this particular use case, and generally I recommend it as like an EDC kind of Tech Sling. So let's take a look at what we have inside of here, starting with the battery. I'm bringing here a Nitecore Pocket 10,000 USB-C battery. It has a built-in USB-C charger there, and then you have inside of here the little lights to show you how much charge is, and an extra USB-C port. Very light carbon fiber style design here, and good capacity, and very flat and very small. It's like one of my favorite little USB-C batteries. There's obviously smaller ones like the NB Air, which I've previously reviewed on the channel, and others that you can put in there. But generally I like Nitecore batteries. They've always been reliable for me, though I know some other people might have had different experiences, so I usually go with something like that. Inside of here I have my Evergoods Elements Bifold wallet, which I have previously reviewed on the channel. It has issues. You can already see one of them right here, but it does have some nice benefits that I've kind of come to tolerate some of its flaws over time. But that's a nice little wallet. It fits inside of here. And then I have here my little Rofmia coin pouch, because I usually carry coins. In my country, we use coins. In the country I went to, they also use coins fairly regularly. So this is a kind of nice little combo, fits right inside of here. At the bottom, I have a cool little thing here. So this is a Vidal Sassoon USB-C travel hair iron. So you may not need to carry a hair iron. If I don't do something with my hair, it looks like 2 rabid raccoons had like a UFC brawl in a bush, and then they taped the results in the aftermath to my head. So I got to do something about that. So if you don't look good, it don't matter. So in that case, I have this USB-C travel tiny little USB-C travel hair iron. I hated the other ones. They're so big, they had the big cable or whatever. I didn't want to bring, like every time I'm traveling really minimally, like such a waste of weight and size and cordage and bulk for such a dedicated item. So either I would just tolerate the raccoon, you know, in the bush fight taped to my head situation, or, you know, I would just break down and grimace and bear it and bring that kind of like big bulky thing. But this thing is tiny, no built-in battery, so it's airline safe, connects with a single USB-C cable to the USB-C charger you already have and the cables you already have, and it gets up to 180 degrees Celsius. There are a variety of those available, at least in the Asian markets. So I urge you to look online if that's something that you're interested in. It's plenty fine. You wouldn't want to use this as your main hair iron, but for like, you know, travel use for a few days, it's perfect. I really love how tiny this is. That just drops in the bottom right here. Up here at the top on the inside kind of stretch pocket, I don't have anything, but usually I'll put some stuff inside of there other than my air tag. When I'm using this bag as an EDC at the destination, on the outside in the quick access pocket, here I normally put my chapstick or like my, you know, my comb or something like that, or hand sanitizer. So I'd have that easily accessible when I'm on the go. Right now inside of here, I have my keys on a James brand carabiner. I quite like, I usually use the bigger ones, I forgot what they're called, the Harbins or what. I'll put it on the screen. But this one is the new smaller one, which is even better because it's less bulky or whatever. Just have my keys taped up so you can't lock, picky, and lawyer me. And then inside of here, I have I forgot the brand of this, but it's been serving me faithfully for years, a multi-adapter for the different countries. So I'll usually bring always like one universal adapter, and then inside of my tech kit, I'll have like one more adapter specialized for the country I'm going in. So I have like a backup just in case stuff. But especially in USB-C world, everything just fits inside of, you know, everything can be powered with one device. So, you know, you just have this thing and you can adapt that and it's great. Last item to talk about is the kind of compute device. Depending on the loadout and where I'm going and what I need to do, I kind of found the most useful was the 11-inch iPad Pro. Now it's usable for a lot of like your basic devices, basic tasks that you would normally have used a computer for. And that lets you go, especially when you marry to the type cover here, which I really like the keys on the type cover. I think for a tablet cover, like they're amazing. They're obviously not like, you know, a nice mechanical keyboard, but they're very, very fine. It's a good size at the 11-inch, lets you get a lot of productivity done. You can do image editing, you can do reading and writing of emails, draft documents, you can SSH in through a terminal, you can do video editing, obviously reading and other kinds of consumption, video watching, whatever, movie watching, whatever, listen to music and stuff. It's not that much lighter than a 13-inch MacBook Air, to be honest. And so there are some obviously compromised things that are just better on a full-fledged computer than on this thing, but it is significantly smaller. And the thing I really like that shouldn't be overrated in my opinion, or shouldn't be overlooked in my opinion, is it has built-in cellular. So you can usually get like an eSIM plan whenever you land in a country or whatever, then you just have internet all the time on your device. You don't need to worry about tethering or looking for a hot spot Wi-Fi or whatever. Like it's just all right there and you're always connected and ready to go here. So let me show you how easy it is to pack this in real time. So we'll start by dropping in this iPad in there. We'll drop in our wallet and stuff inside of here, our hair iron there, our pocket power bank there. We'll drop the keys and the AC adapter inside of there. We'll take the packing cube and put it inside of here. I know it's upside down, forgive me. And then we're going to put this tech kit camera in there. We'll probably tuck this and this just somewhere like this maybe for now. And then we will zip it up. There you go. You can probably arrange that even slightly more carefully, but you can see it's a very easy like loadout and kind of transit or whatever. And that's all you need. All I needed anyway for like a 4-day trip, excuse me. You can obviously do 5 days on there if you need to. Gets your stuff from point A to point B really easily, but also is a really capable EDC destination bag. And there is, you know, I didn't pack this out the most efficiently just now because I was kind of doing it on camera, but that still gives you a little bit of extra capacity in case you buy like something at the destination and you want to put it in there, if you need to roll up like a light shell or something like that, it would also kind of fit in at the top like that. Anyway, so really that is it. Let me know if you enjoyed this particular video. If you have any questions about the loadout or things that I talked about inside of here, if you'd like me to do more videos like this or similar or whatever, or if there's kind of any gear or bags that you'd like me to review, leave those in the comments below and then I'll respond. Thank you very much.